This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Grateful to have you here on this episode of Real Talk in just a moment. As we do the first episode of every week, Supriya Dwivedi will join us for a look across the country and around the world at the top headlines right out of the gates in our live chat powered by Park Power. Alberta's legislators are back. The MLAs are back. The fall session is back. Politics happening obviously across the country, but we're paying particularly close attention to what's happening in Alberta. As you know, as teachers remain off the job, and everybody right now waiting for them to be ordered back. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith says that's the plan. She says, this irreparable harm mile marker that they've had, the education minister told us about that. Dimitrios Nikolaitis said when this show asked, when would you consider ordering them back? He says, as soon as we deem there to be a risk of irreparable harm. And they said that would be right around the 3-week mark. We're there. And so I think that the 50,000+ teachers, the 750,000 or so students that are out of class, their families, their caregivers are waiting to see what's going to happen here. David T. is not optimistic in our live chat powered by Park Power, says, good morning, Real Talkers. I'm waiting to see what horrible legislation the UCP is planning to unleash on teachers. And then he just gives an Gizmo meantime. Thanks for your YouTube membership, Gizmo. Says, I think every union in the province should walk off the job and shut down the province until Danielle gets it in her head she has to negotiate in good faith. Emily says, in a possible general strike across the province if they try to impose or invoke the notwithstanding clause on teachers. We brought this up with Erika Barutis and Cheryl Oates, co-hosts of The Discourse, in our most recent episode of the show, whether or not this might happen, this whole general strike, in other words, public servants, public sector workers across the province going on strike in support, in solidarity for the teachers. And you can check out that episode to see on the 24th of October what they have to say about it. It's a big move. For what it's worth, it's a bridge. Once you cross that bridge, it ramps things up in layperson's language. Could that happen? Is it likely? Well, I guess we'll see. We'll get to Supriya Dwivedi in just a little bit as well. By the way, trade talks with Canada and the United States, as is kind of the trend right now, back in the toilet. As a matter of fact, there's no talks happening right now. As the president says, it'll be a long time before he meets with Mark Carney again. Tariffs cranked up after Ontario, Supriya's home province. We better bring her in before we start doing this. So we'll give a second so she can either defend the province of Ontario and Doug Ford's move, or at least give us that perspective on it. But these Super Bowl ads, quoting Ronald Reagan, running during the first game, did I say Super Bowl? World Series ads running through the first game of the World Series, and obviously getting under the skin of POTUS as he has cranked up tariffs another 10% on non-CUSMA goods. That means that tariffs are now, in some cases, over 50%. What's the average Canadian going to think? We'll get into that. Let's get started officially. This episode of Real Talk is happening with the presenting sponsorship of Hanson Distillery. Real Talk, Real Spirits. Hanson Distillery is Edmonton's original distillery, rooted in prairie grit and a rebellious spirit, known for authentic small batch whiskey, vodka, gin, moonshine, and unique liqueurs. Checking out their website right now, hansondistillery.com. Check this out, an oat milk cream liqueur. How good is that? Maple brown sugar. That sounds pretty good, Johnny. First thing in the morning.
Gluten-free?
Vegan, gluten-free.
Grab me a sixer.
I was going to say first thing in the morning, but I guess you could enjoy this at any time during the day.
Looks healthy.
Do yourself a favor. Every bottle of Hanson tells a true story of passion, heritage, and hands-on craftsmanship. So raise a glass to Real Talk and Real Spirits. Visit Hanson Distillery in person if you're in the Metro Edmonton region on 174th Street, 111th Ave, or check out their latest creations in Alberta liquor stores. Hanson Distillery is proudly local, always original, made right here. As we greet the show's best buddy, who joins us first episode of every single week in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, Supriya Dwivedi. It's nice to see your face.
You too, Ryan.
You shit disturbers. Game 1 of the World Series. And Doug Ford rolls out. I actually thought that the ad is fantastic. We talked about it on the show last week, this World Series ad that runs, and it's basically just the voice of Ronald Reagan throughout, talking about how he's not super keen on tariffs, but it obviously ticked off President Trump in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, it did. And look, I'm of two minds of this because on the one hand, the ad was stupid, okay? It's not because it pissed Trump off, which it obviously did. It's stupid because there's literally no demographic of these moderate Republicans anymore. There's no such thing as a Reagan Republican or a so-called centrist Reagan Democrat or whatever. They're all dead, okay? They're either all dead or they've decided to go with the flow and have become these, MAGA Republicans. So the ad in and of itself was never really going to change any of these minds, and it was always going to fall on deaf ears at best. But it didn't just fall on deaf ears at best, right? We're now into like the sort of worst case scenario, which is that Trump has now decided to scapegoat these ads as a reason for why he's now calling off all, trade talks with our country, even though, of course, the ad was not taken out by the federal government. It was done so by the government of Ontario. And by the way, it cost taxpayers in Ontario $75 million. So for $75 million, we bought an ad while slick looking, okay, that didn't change any minds except for Trump's, which is now, changing it for the negative. And I'm not really sure what the goal of this was going to be. Like, did Premier Ford think this was going to all of a sudden awaken all of these Reagan Republicans that are, ostensibly still for free trade and not all in on the MAGA cultishness? Like, I don't know.
There's this interesting thing. I love this tweet by Flavio Volpe, who says, to be clear, a TV commercial is about to cost American consumers about $50 billion because he's mad. And I thought that kind of summed it up well. I think no, that's not true. Everybody doesn't realize, but a lot of people realize that tariffs will be passed on to the consumers, that tariffs will cost the American people, but it also costs business. Like businesses obviously see massive drops in exports and imports and productivity, et cetera, in markets. When it happens. But, there are a couple of thoughts here in Alberta. I don't know who the Ontario equivalent is, but here in Alberta, if you cite Peter Lougheed, it kind of it resonates in a way with people if the comparison is apt and if it's accurate. But, I think probably the Alberta Premier, widely renowned to have steered the most effective government, or the Premier that maybe Albertans are most proud of, who found that sweet spot of fighting for Alberta and challenging Ottawa in a reputable way, not in a tantrum way. And so you'll hear people say that was like Lougheed-esque, or this leader brings shades of Lougheed to the table. And you wonder, I guess, if the government of Ontario, if Premier Ford's comms team sort of sees or at least, forecast that Americans see Ronald Reagan in that way, talking about matters of the economy, like in a way where you sort of thought like his voice, the sound of his voice. I mean, the ad is it's just him. It's essentially Reagan narrating the ad, right?
Sure.
Pulling from his clips. I don't know. I don't know that I see sort of the Reagan legacy cited, at all. Like you just said, not just by American Republicans, but by Canadians for that matter. People don't exactly look back, I don't think, at that. I mean, you may look at sort of the early days of free trade. I sort of think on the Canadian side, Brian Mulroney, and you sort of look to it and think of that era of the Canada-U.S. relationship. But yeah, I don't know. It sort of like on the pros and cons list, when the team's putting together the idea around that ad and forecasting or budgeting what they're going to spend on it, what they thought the real call to action was, or not just who it would resonate with, but how it would resonate. Would there all of a sudden be people, gathering around the construction fences at the White House with placards calling for a return to Reaganomics? I don't know.
Yeah, I also don't know. And I mean, to your point, in terms of who this was supposed to hit, like I get the sort of underlying thinking. So if I'm Ford's team and I'm around him and, we are looking at the timeline here, the midterms are coming up. So if you want to focus on some of the more moderate Republicans in these midterm states to go, holy crap, like these tariffs are actually costing us a whole chunk of money, and it's, consumers in America that are going to be paying for these tariffs. And oh, by the way, our hero, Ronald Reagan, was also against these tariffs. Then sure, fine. My whole thing is that when Ronald Reagan was first elected president, it was before I was born, and I'm middle-aged. I'm a middle-aged mom who is not cool anymore and is certainly not on the, up and up and is not with it anymore. And Reagan is too old for me. So you have to go from everybody that's going to be middle-aged and younger, right? For this ad, the Gen Z and millennials do outpace boomers in terms of voters, not just here in Canada, but in the States as well. So right off the bat, it's a shrinking demographic, and then you just think of what the Republican Party has become over these last few years. Let's say starting with Trump, 1.0 and now in Trump 2.0. And I would say that they're all successfully either muted, silent, or just not around anymore because they've passed on. And that's a reality we're all going to have to grapple with. And you saw the Democrats, right? They tried this strategy on the last presidential campaign where they're trying to appeal to this moderate Republican by bringing out Liz Cheney every chance they got, and it didn't get them anywhere because they're all dead. These people do not exist, and the faster we realize that these people no longer exist, and we have to play in reality, which is we are dealing with MAGA Republicans that don't necessarily have a coherent ideology when it comes to general trade policy or tariffs. Then that's where we're going to start to at least make a little bit of headway, because now we're no longer shooting for some sort of aspirational median Republican voter, but we're dealing with the average regular Republican voter.
The premiers in Ontario and Alberta have probably been most prominent, is it fair to say, in advocating for their own provinces and advocating for their own industries, so to speak. I think, Danielle Smith early, these kind of, my words, not hers, but kind of these trade missions or these diplomacy missions down to Mar-a-Lago and DC for the inauguration and that, criticized, I think, by some who felt like she wasn't playing on Team Canada. She's playing on Team Alberta. She's basically saying, I'm not going to apologize. I mean, some people were calling her traitor, and that story has developed over the past number of months. I think that actually, to be honest, Danielle Smith, all things considered, wound up looking pretty good, considering some of the names or the insults that were being hurled at her, and then the approach that other premiers started taking with the benefit of time behind them. But Doug Ford as well, doing his own advocacy. And you kind of wonder, I mean, you've worked as a senior advisor to a Canadian prime minister. What's Mark Carney thinking about this? The fact that now he's over in Kuala Lumpur, the president of the United States says he, quote, doesn't want to talk to Mark Carney, says Carney, the two of them haven't spoken since trade talks broke off quite some time ago. Is Doug Ford creating problems for Mark Carney in a way that might have the PMO reaching out to the government of Ontario saying, WTF?
I would be very surprised if the federal government has not already reached out to the Ontario government to say some version of WTF, whether that was at the senior staff to senior staff level, or perhaps like one of the trusted ministers that's, within Prime Minister Carney's orbit, reaching out to their counterpart in Ontario. Like, I would be very surprised if that didn't happen, because the one thing you do need, and you're absolutely right that Premier Smith now, in hindsight, I hope everybody that, was dumb enough to call her a traitor at least now realizes that it was not the case and that they were wrong. But I do hope that what we can sort of take away from this is that you need a single point guard, quarterback, pitcher, whatever your sports metaphor is here, to be Captain Canada. And the only person that can actually be Captain Canada is the Prime Minister. It can't actually be a premier because, premiers do have competing interests within the country, right? Manitoba's interests are not going to be the same as Quebec's interests, which aren't going to be the same as British Columbia's, not going to be the same as Alberta's, et cetera, et cetera. And the premiers should, rightfully all be fighting for their provinces. Their job isn't to fight for the country. Their job is to fight for their own province. The Prime Minister's job is to fight for the entire country and to come out with a deal that is, best for all of us. And I think right now, you've seen this sort of in the past too, where premiers did like to sort of freestyle and do their own thing. That happened with Trump 1.0. You saw that a little bit with Trump 2.0 in the sort of early days, what you're alluding to, Ryan, with, Premier Smith going down by herself to Mar-a-Lago and whatnot. But, since the summer months sort of onwards, I would say that we've seen a pretty united front from the premiers, even some of the ones that weren't always on the same page with the federal government. So this is a marked, a marked sort of break from what we've had the last little bit. And I would be incredibly frustrated if I was Prime Minister Carney or anybody that's, working on the Canada-U.S. file in the PMO.
Yeah, so citing reporting by the Globe and Mail, so the trade talks with Canada broken off, although I'm not convinced. Isn't it ironic, Supriya, before you join us, we'll let people know that if you're joining our YouTube live stream a few minutes early, you hear what's called the Real Talk pre-roll, and these are like our highlights from the previous week or from recent interviews that really resonated. And we're listening to one of them, and we're talking about how, like, things are coming around. And, like, basically, like, and I'm talking to, you and I were talking, was Canada truly elbows down on India? And I'm going, yeah, but, like, elbows up Gordie Howe, and, like, diplomacy and a gentleman, and it can happen, and it's positive, and they're making progress. And I'm listening to this just from last week as I'm preparing to talk to you about how everything's broken down and broken off again, and it's a mess. And that just kind of seems to have been the trend the entire time. So both leaders, Carney and Trump, as mentioned, in Malaysia for that Association of Southeast Asian Nations, but did not meet, they've confirmed. And then Trump speaking to reporters just a couple of hours before we're talking to you when he was en route to Japan. They'll both be, again, Carney and Trump at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in South Korea this week. Says the president, quote, "I don't want to meet with him. I'm not going to be meeting with him for a long time." It's not your average president. This isn't your average relationship. Typically in politics, these things work themselves out. Everybody chooses their words carefully and diplomatically, and millions or billions of people around the world have faith that the processes will unfold as they should. And in a case like this, hypothetically, if you're like, in the steel business, or if you're in the canola business, or whatever, any business that's impacted by this right now, take your pick. What are you supposed to be thinking?
Yeah, I that's a great question. And I mean, you need certainty in business for sure, because that's how you friggin' plan, right? And when you have somebody that's clearly flying by the seat of their pants a little bit in the Oval Office, you don't really get that certainty. And so I can only imagine the kind of disruption that this is doing at the industry level. But what I will say in defense of Premier Ford and the ad, even though, I did just say how dumb it was because there's no constituency for it, is that if not this, it likely would have been something else. I can't imagine that nothing else would have pissed Trump off for him to throw, the word you used is tantrum, essentially take his ball and go home and say that the talks are off. I think that Premier Ford is a bit of a useful scapegoat right now, but it's impossible to see another scenario where he doesn't do the ad and something else just doesn't piss him off. Like, I don't know if you saw he put out a Truth Social post that was like, I'm not going to invite either team, either the Dodgers or the Jays, to the White House because they're both losers. Like, who knows? Somebody would have said something in like a post-game interview that would have pissed him off. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't need an excuse. And unfortunately, we did give him one in Ontario. But I think it just would have been something else.
It's interesting. I saw one comment on here. Somebody said, well, Governor Newsom has to have loved what Premier Ford did with the ads. The state of California must love it. In our live chat powered by Park Power, Gizmo says, I don't care what Donald Trump does anymore. A tantrum out of the blue has become too predictable or too expected. Others are just, basically saying kind of that it's worth it, right? Like, Boom Shanker X says, the fact of the matter is the economy's changing, so we all better just buckle up. Jillian says, Pierre Poilievre's been very quiet about conservative Premier Ford fucking things up. Semper Fi Danny says, but on the other hand, oh, do I say it? Schittler has also shown that these decisions are made on vibes, not policy. His secretary could accidentally give him a can of regular, like Coca-Cola Classic, and even that could set him off. Lightning Rod says, I'm not convinced that Kuzma wasn't already dead long before this ad came out. Ken K says, I actually disagree with Supriya. Minds are changing in the U.S. Says, I've seen some of these former Trump loyalists, like my own mother, who are now seeing that he's doing more harm than good. Alicia says, couldn't you argue that it's not about changing MAGA minds, but maybe mobilizing folks into resistance? She says, I mean, like, what's the alternative? What is the alternative?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like, not necessarily going for hardcore MAGA, but just trying to point out to folks that you are the ones that are paying the tariffs and it's costing you a bunch. Sure. We keep waiting for these people, for these median voters to sort of realize that they've been duped by MAGA and that they are paying more for things and things aren't necessarily like their lives, their economic precarity or whatever isn't getting better. Grocery prices aren't going down the way that, Trump promised. And so I can certainly understand why you'd want to appeal to that, but I just don't see that we've seen that sort of that swing. And, midterms are coming up somewhat imminently in the timeline of campaigning anyway. So we'll see if it makes a sizable difference. But I mean, Trump won pretty handedly the last election, and it's not as though people didn't know who he was. I mean, the guy did a coup, and the American people decided to put in the guy who did a coup, and now he's openly musing about a third term, and the White House gift shop is selling Trump 2028 merch.
Is
And
it actually?
We're all just, yeah. And we're all just pretending like it's not happening. Yeah.
Oh, man.
The gift shop sells 2028 merch, man. Like it's kind of nuts. And we're all pretending like this guy's going to leave. He's demolishing the East Wing to put up a ballroom. Does that sound like a guy who's leaving in like 3.5 years or whatever it is?
Yeah, fair.
Probably not.
Danny says the only thing is Ford pulled the ad in response. If you're going to go elbows up instead of shutting up, then you better go all in or not at all. Vanity projects are serving nobody particularly well. Super Chat Ken says Ontario's losing out more on this than any province in Canada, and I'll forgive Ford if he doesn't believe that any deal would be followed by a president that doesn't care about norms, laws, or ethics, which is a fair point as well. Matthew says, I think the commercial presented a great opportunity for unlimited clean energy. Imagine all the power generated by Reagan spinning in his grave after Trump said that he loved tariffs. So, people are finding silver linings on this.
Yeah, I guess. And it's also, it's worth pointing out, though, that the Reagan Foundation or whatever, they're the ones who came out and did say that this was doctored or they took his words out of context, which they didn't. I mean, there's been a bunch of media outlets that have done fact checks on this. It's literally, they're just Reagan's words. There's no cheating, as President Trump said, that we cheated on a commercial, whatever the heck that means.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We can talk about Reagan and, free market Republicans until we're both blue in the face. But the reality is that the Republican Party has decided to go all in on Trump, like establishment Republican Party. So yeah, to the commenter's point in the live chat, it's possible that there are some people on the fence, but they got to turn up in numbers and we're not necessarily hearing from them in droves.
Okay.
I just want to say I think you're still cool, Supriya. And I think you're one of the
thank
coolest
you.
moms I know. Also, here is Trump in the gift shop at the White House holding up
real?
Trump 2028 merch that they're selling.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to puke right now.
I know, but
But
like, Ryan, do you
everyone's
remember-
been expecting it. Like
I guess, but this was like years ago. You had me on when Roe v. Wade was overturned, right? And you were like, well, are you surprised? And I was like, no, because they've been saying they wanted to do this. Project 2025 was public, right? They put it out there. They're saying what they want to do. And it's like, it's incumbent upon us to actually fucking take them at their word and believe them. And I don't know why we don't. But like, if Trump is saying, and his people are looking for loopholes or whatever to run again for a third term in 2028, we should probably take that seriously. Like, I know on Air Force One, he just ruled out doing this like cutesy sort of switcheroo where he could potentially run as a VP and then, get in as a third term that way. And he did rule that out, but he hasn't really ruled anything else out. And I think, given what's going on with the Supreme Court in the U.S., I don't think it's a impossible scenario. And I think it's even a completely plausible or likely scenario that what ends up going before the Supreme Court is some sort of question of whether or not Trump can run for a third term. And they'll see some sort of loophole that because it's not concurrent terms or successive terms, right? Because he did lose in 2020, even though he doesn't like to admit that, that he can run again for another term.
It'll give us all the election that we want. It'll give us Trump v. Obama. Let's go. If you're opening it up for third terms, let's see. Let's put a respectfully to the other two. Let's put a superstar Democratic nominee in that has the potential to wipe the floor with him. Let's see it. You want to see that?
I do, but I think the better scrap is AOC versus Trump. I think the fury flies there.
Respectfully to AOC, Obama is a formidable I mean, she's an effective politician, but there's Donald Trump versus Barack Obama would be the debate. Are you kidding me? What is like triple the Super Bowl numbers? That's what that would do. That debate would do that. Why are you laughing? Wouldn't you love to see it?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But like Johnny's also not wrong. AOC is also the future of the party, right? Like think about how many people are now disaffected and kind of with Obama. Like just because. No, go.
No, you go. I'm listening to you too. I'm just not convinced. I'm respectfully not convinced.
Obama's obviously, I would say the all-star pinch hitter or whatever. Again, mixing all sorts of sports metaphors to pluck onto the field.
He would be what Mark Carney was to the Liberal Party. Like, come back and save us from certain ruin.
I don't know if he can rally. Like I don't like all that hopey, changey stuff that worked for him in 2008.
Yeah.
Like now it's like again, like I was an undergrad when Obama was first elected, right? Like I'm a middle-aged mom now who's not cool and who's cynical AF.
It's like the
Stop
third
saying
time.
this,
Stop
Supriya,
saying
you're
this.
still
Why are you
cool.
saying this? You're still cool.
We can't
Supriya.
wait to see you at the Christmas party because you're one of the coolest guests we invited.
That is true. Everybody wants into the Christmas party now that they know Supriya's coming.
But I will say, like if you did like AOC with Newsom as vice would just be crazy. They'd be relentless on Trump. And I think they're a little more, I get what Supriya is saying. Like Obama was great for his time, but is he good for like dropping bombs on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram like those guys are today? I think it's a little past his prime, but I do agree that it would still be great to see Obama come back against Trump. It would be insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for all of it. It's like sort of like it's like when what do they say? Like the strings continued to play on the Titanic. That's sort of the sort of entertainment that I'm talking about. Jillian says Ford should not have pulled the ad, but he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's also clueless. That from Jillian. Supriya Dwivedi joining us. Jillian from Montreal, by the way. I want to ask you about the Montrealers' take on the World Series and what you're noticing as a native Montrealer, the Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's team. Look at your face for the benefit of the people on the podcast. You just are shaking your head, closing your eyes. What are you hearing from your fellow? I shouldn't say fellow Montrealers. You're living in Toronto now, but those you've known for your life.
I mean, once a Montrealer, always a Montrealer. You know. So sure. I spent this past weekend there, and seeing a bunch of friends I haven't in a while, and my kid's very in on the Jays because I mean she's a Toronto kid, right? Has never lived in Montreal. She was born here. This is the only city she knows. And my best friend's kid, he's only 3, but a 3-year-old is going to bandwagon on whatever. So he's also very into the Jays. And it's just interesting because like as I was talking with friends of mine, they were like, well, it's like I don't know if it's Canada's team. Like we're still hurt from the Expos, and it's like. The Expos have not existed since 2004. Okay. Like I know it hurts. Trust me. I grew up in Montreal and I was at one of the last games. Like it does it right here. It hurts. Okay. But I also grew up in Montreal. So I know that anytime you'd meet anyone from Quebec City, they root against the Habs because they're still in mourning over losing the Nordiques.
Yeah.
When I was like 10 years old or something, right? Like when did we lose the Nordiques? In 95?
Yeah, it was right before the Avs won the Stanley Cup. So yeah.
Yeah. So like, and it's like as a Habs fan, we'd always get annoyed when you'd get like these Nordiques frustrés coming down to the, Molson Center, Bell Center, forum before that to like snipe at us. And I just think that like, even if the Expos still existed, okay, the Jays are the ones that are in the World Series. And you mean to tell me we're not going to root for the Jays over the Dodgers out of all the teams? Like, come on.
Well, this is kind of like in Alberta, like when the Oilers make the Stanley Cup final and everybody south of Red Deer has a choice to make.
Yeah.
And that is that are the Oilers going to be Alberta's team? Or is it like, I mean, here in Edmonton, for example, if Calgary does really well, Edmonton adopts the ABC policy, right? Like anybody but Calgary, anybody but Calgary. I don't know, Johnny, we've seen it like for the Oilers' recent cup runs. We've heard some reports of hockey fans flying Oilers car flags down in Calgary, but I don't think it's the norm.
No, but I mean, Oilers fans travel, right? Like I just watched the Canucks game last night and like half of my newsfeed on Instagram and TikTok was like, all the boys down in Vancouver. Like, and then you see when Oilers scored last night, I'm like, oh my God, you can hear the applause. Like how many, it's like half the crowd was Oilers fans last night. But I do agree it doesn't transfer to like Calgary. But I don't know if I'm an anyone but Calgary if Calgary's in the final against the Lightning or something.
Well, it's interesting.
I
know I'm realizing more and more, including like our superstar guest first episode of every week reiterating how she's a middle-aged mom. And then I'm realizing how much younger you are than me. And then now I want to cite every example I have of my life experience is like 20 years old. But Calgary makes the Cup final 04. Oilers make it in 06 with the lockout in 05. So it was like an interesting era in Alberta hockey to see who is on board with what.
It's hard to be I mean, obviously I want the Jays to win, but it's hard to hate the Dodgers when Ohtani is just like, he's such a gentleman. He's so humble. You see the video of him filling up all the water cups and putting them on so that when people come up to get water in the bullpen, or in the dugout, like, they don't have to pour their own water.
He probably just feels guilty. Like if I was making what's he making? He's making $1 billion. He probably just feels like he should do something.
Well, put some champagne in there. At least,
Wise Kyle says on AOC and Newsom says, I don't think throwing the two most polarizing politicians against Trump, who is also polarizing, is how you get. He says that's how you get low turnout. And a Trump third term. Justin says, I agree with Supriya. The ad was really good, but didn't really accomplish anything. Hey, I'm sure you saw this. I think everybody in Canada, well, maybe I'm overestimating, but a pretty significant rally outside the Alberta Legislature over the weekend. I want to talk to you about that. This they call it the Alberta Prosperity Project. It's basically Alberta Separatists, a whole bunch of them out there. More with Supriya Dwivedi in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West in just a moment. But Real Talkers, if you didn't catch this interview with Kerry Williams from North Road Financial, I want to draw your attention to our October 23rd episode. He's talking about that 4% rule for kind of retirement planning, wealth management. But Kerry approaches it from a really someone like me can understand it, put it that way. I'm not a high level, I don't have my MBA, I'm not an economist, I don't know what the hell is going on, but Kerry does an amazing job kind of laying out exactly what we should be thinking about. Whether you're 20, 40, 60, 80, you name it. Sage advice from Kerry Williams at North Road Investment Council. You can learn more about what they're doing by checking out northroadic.com. Again, that was our episode on the 24th, or the 23rd rather, of October, the one with our exclusives with Calgary and Edmonton's mayors-elect. No big deal. Friesen Brothers hooking us up for our Real Talk Election Night viewing party. An amazing bit of catering. We ordered that right off their website at cateringbyfriesen.com. You can do the exact same thing. And a quick heads up, of course, I always want to make sure I remind you with a bit of runway ahead of you. November 1st, coming up before you know it, your next chance to save 15% on all grocery purchases, $75 or more, only at Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Pathways Alliance is powering Canada's economy by way of the oil and gas sector, in particular Canada's oil sands. You know, the 6 biggest oil sands producers are working together through Pathways Alliance. They acknowledge that the world is changing. Energy demand is changing, and Pathways Alliance is providing energy the world needs while advancing environmental innovation and projects. The Prime Minister talked to us about Pathways Alliance on the 10th of September. You can check out that interview in our archives, and you can visit pathwaysalliance.ca to learn more about what's happening in Canada's oil sands. And before we get back to Supriya, a quick note that California Closets of Canada wide open right now for free consultations. You go to their website to book it. That's where you can check in with one of their designers. I recommend visiting one of their stunning showrooms. You can actually see what these installations look like. Everything you're going to see is manufactured right here in our home province of Alberta, and everything they install is guaranteed for life. As we're talking about tariffs and Canada and the U.S. and where Canadians are investing their money, if you're investing in a custom closet or a storage solution, remember, California Closets is proudly Canadian-owned and operating. You can request that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. So we get these news releases, Supriya. Oh, Johnny. What are you doing? Throwing a curveball.
This is how I
throwing a curveball for those listening to the podcast. I'm ready to launch into really serious talk about Alberta separation, and instead you go with a romantic union. Look at this.
This is how I sit in the morning right here.
This is released by Dumois, which is an Instagram account you got to follow here. But your former boss, Supriya, he's out with one of the world's biggest pop stars again. Shall we spend a couple moments talking about it?
I mean, we can. Look, I told you when this was a couple of weeks ago, I think, when the news first broke, that I'm happy for him. You know, he's a private citizen. He's single. Let him have some fun. And I think for, with respect to her as well, like, she's also signal. Let her have some fun,
I mean, I think it's a huge flex on his part, so good for him. I don't care how you vote or what you think about Justin Trudeau. He's dating freaking Katy Perry. Johnny, your thoughts?
Like I told you, this is me every day.
Just staring, just wistfully at it. They both look really good.
They look incredible. Yeah, they're both on the.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I think I told you it was like when we spoke after Thanksgiving, like I had seen him that Thursday briefly. And I mean, he told me then he was going to Paris to see her. So like we knew, like everybody in his like I think it's just I find that the Canadian reaction, it's interesting because, you guys are like, oh, look good for him. But there's still a sizable contingent that is quite angry about anything he does. And it's like, guys, he really just let him live his life, man. Like he's no longer, like stop flying the flags. Like he's just let him live his life.
I just want to see him in the next video. That's what I want to see.
Or the song that she writes about him.
Him on the yacht in some jean shorts.
Have a reference to the carbon tax, so she could write about the carbon tax.
Carbon tax and Canadian tuxedos.
Yeah. We're just not used as well to seeing like, former federal leaders or prime ministers be cool. And be like, walking out of like hot spots in global cities with, and they're not like photographing, they're like holding hands. This is like what's the romantic version of when cops do the perp walk? When like someone's under arrest and the cops walk them like from the van into the station so all the TV cameras can get them. What's the romantic version of that? Like the red carpet. They're doing the like lovers perp walk here. They're out for everyone.
The PDA perp walk.
The PDA perp walk. There it is.
I don't even care if it's fake. I don't care if they signed some kind of personality contract for a year.
It's not
I think
fake.
it's funny.
So what was he like when he told you about it? Was he like had like trying to not to smile, and was he saying, or like did you ask him?
No, look, it's like it's not fake. Like I think like people that are like grabbing at like conspiracies that must be some like manufactured thing. Like it's not. Like just be happy for two people that
How did they meet? Do you know how they met?
There was a DM sliding in.
Really? Who slid into whose DMs?
I'm not getting into this.
Oh,
no,
come
no,
on.
no.
That's
We're
relevant.
No.
It's relevant.
How do you think they met? Like they had to meet through representatives, right? Like it wasn't as though they already were in each other's orbits. They're not running into each other at the grocery store, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm just be curious to know. Like, I mean, either name sliding into someone's DMs would be significant, right? It's either the former prime minister or it's one of the world's biggest pop stars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of them managed their own accounts for what it's worth, so I think it would have been a rep from either side.
Oh, so it would have been more of a diplomatic, like, the prime minister is, the right honorable is interested in exploring a conversation about
on official letterhead.
Your availability in matters of the heart.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Okay. So they're saying it's about 10,000 people at the Alberta Legislature. It's kind of funny. We get into these crowd games. I have no idea how many people there were. I will say this, to credit. First of all, I hate the premise of why they're all here, because they're here, they want to break the country apart and they want Alberta to leave Canada, and I think that's idiotic. However, these are my fellow Albertans, and may we just acknowledge that is a beautiful flag. The Alberta flag is a beautiful flag. I refuse to be disheartened when I see it, but I don't love when I see 500 flags flying that it's because everybody wants to leave. I don't love it, but there they are. Credit to the rally organizers. I mean, they packed that place. The legislature grounds, Supriya, have been packed day after day after day with you. Either got teachers out there furious at the state of their non-negotiation. Now you've got Alberta Separatists out there, I guess trying to remind the rest of the province and the rest of the country that their momentum has not evaporated, that they're still keen on leaving. Anybody in Ontario talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. I was hoping you could Alberta-splain this to me, as it were, because, I mean, we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of the last Quebec referendum this week, and, a lot has happened in those 30 years, but, like, do we need to be gearing up for an actual legit Albertan referendum? Like, it's like up until now, I think the rest of Canada, not that we haven't taken it seriously, but it's sort of been like, okay, there are a few people that have some gripes, and they're likely being influenced a little bit by the 51st state rhetoric right now, and it hasn't really hit as like a serious national unity issue. I think in the same way that perhaps a Quebec burgeoning movement to separate would be having at this exact same moment, and I think that's somewhat unfair to Alberta. So I'm just asking you, like, how serious should the rest of the country be taking this right now? Like, should Mark Carney be looking at this and be going, whoa, with this happening in Alberta, and a Parti Québécois, a resurgent Parti Québécois party in Quebec, am I looking at potentially two provinces wanting to separate in the next year and a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Everybody has a right to participate in the democratic process as they see fit. And we talked to former Deputy Premier Thomas Lakazik. I'm showing it here just a few days ago. That was on our Friday episode. Eric and Cheryl joining us that one as well. But Thomas was talking to us about the progress of his Forever Canadian movement. Supriya, this was their last. So tomorrow, basically, we're talking to you on the 27th. Tomorrow, the 28th, is their deadline to submit their 300,000 signatures. And their question is, what is it, Johnny? Let me call it up so I don't mess it up. But it's forever-canadian.ca. Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? So they're trying to get ahead of this. They want to basically block the Separatists from having their referendum question asked. It could go to referendum, and then, as you know, as everybody saw in Quebec, then the campaigns begin, because then it's serious.
Yeah.
Like, if it's actually going to happen, then you've got people will be fighting for Alberta to remain in Canada. People will be fighting for Alberta to leave. The tone and tenure of this show will change 100%. My flag is firmly planted unapologetically that Alberta my Canada includes Alberta. My Alberta includes being a part of Canada. I mean, that's just the way that I'm wired. That's how I strongly feel. We've heard other perspectives on this show, and I'll entertain other perspectives under the premise of having, reputable, credible, respectful conversations. But I know where my mind is made up, and I know what I will campaign for. This event, like, we got one of their releases here, to our media at ryanjesperson.com account. And I mean, it's just, they're talking about the rally to give you a sense of, like, the rally kicked off with power. I'm going to sound like I'm making fun of them, and I'm not. I'm just reading I'm just literally going to read the words on the paper, okay? But, the rally kicked off with a powerful prayer led by Minister Jeff Goodertam, invoking divine protection for Alberta's families, land, and pursuit of righteousness amid federal tyranny. emceed by John Bolton, the event pulsed with energy, crowd-wide chants of I am Alberta, and fiery speeches blasting 120 years of colonial subjugation. I mean, like, this is kind of the language, invoking colonial or colonialized in a bit of a different tone than you typically hear it in Canada. But, we'll watch it. I mean, I will say this, like, that's a lot of people down there, and that's a big movement. So it's not nothing. But at the end of the day, if I was a betting man, if I had to put a bet on something, I would find it really hard to believe that 50% plus one Albertans would vote to leave. I find it really, really hard to believe.
I mean, safest bet you can always make is to bet on Canada, right? Over anything else. So I'm with you.
We appreciate you. We love our time together, and we will look forward to chatting with you again 1 week from today. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Ryan. Talk soon.
Yeah, you got it. That's Supriya Dwivedi joining us first episode of every week in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. And as Johnny mentioned, she is going to be joining us a little bit later on in November. Supriya will be in studio for one of the Monday mornings, which is going to be pretty fantastic. It'll be on the heels of our Real Talk 5th birthday bash. Which means that there will probably be stacks and stacks of bar glasses and catering stuff to clean up. And the background might be interesting to watch on the studio wide shots here from the our studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton. What do you make of that the separate? I mean, what are they calling it? I should call it what they actually call it, the I Am Alberta rally. But it's a rally for sovereignty. It's a rally for separation. Yeah. What do you think when you see it?
Well, I think it's concerning that many people are out there again. But yeah, I feel bad for the ledge grounds right now. I feel like the gardens are getting trampled, and they probably need, you know what I mean? There's all the grass is, I know it's autumn, but probably got a bunch of divots in it. It's been seeing a lot of foot traffic, but I don't want to brush it aside, because it seems like there are a number of Albertans, especially here in Edmonton, who feel a certain way. And again, it's like a hot and cold thing. I'm like, man, this is great. They love this province. They want to see it do better. But I think the last way to make it better is to separate from the rest of the country, especially in a time when you've got the premier, who most of these people are backing. I mean, these are the same people that went to the next panels and said, "You've got bigger balls than most of the men I know, Madam Premier." And, they're the same people. So, and you've got Madam Premier, you've got Danielle Smith saying, "Hey, we're getting close to finalizing some deals here. I'm feeling better, the partnership we have with Mr. Carney compared to what we had to Mr. Trudeau." So you've got the premier taking 1 or 2 steps forward, and then these people kind of like dragging her heels backwards, back into the big fight, the big pile fight. But and then the backdrop of all this is you've got the teacher strike in the background, which the premier is already dealing with. So I don't know if she likes this. I mean, it's a better contrast than a bunch of people wearing red to have a bunch of people wearing blue and being proud of Alberta out there at the ledge. But I don't know that the premier is thinking this is helping her any right now with all the other stuff she's dealing with. But it is concerning to see this many people come out.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that there's not just those people. There's more than that. There's people on the outskirts, in the rural areas, who aren't even close to Edmonton, who didn't make the trip, who feel the same way, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anytime, and I don't know. Can you show the aerial shots again? Like I'll acknowledge I'm terrible at. Just leave it up there. Let's try to do what's that exercise they do in surveying or in science where they impose the grid across the photo and then you take one of the tiny squares and then you count how many people are in that tiny square and then you multiply it. But I don't know if that's. We don't need to spend a bunch of time and energy talking about whether or not that's 10,000 people. I don't think that's 10,000 people, but at the same time, that's a shitload of people. That's a lot of people down there. I'm going to say at the very least, that's at least a couple thousand, a few thousand at some point. I'm sure that there's other photos that show a different perspective. I heard that there were some drones up there. I saw someone in our live chat saying that they'd like to see an investigation into whether or not the drone flight was permitted at the Alberta Legislature. You got to have a permit to fly a drone down there. But I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of people.
So I just threw this picture into ChatGPT. I said, estimate how many are there. It said roughly 3,000 to 5,000 people.
Okay. Yeah, so there you go. Someone will write in and say, well, that was earlier in the day or that was later in the day, whatever. The point is there were a ton of people there and the movement is not dead. And I would say, you bring up an interesting angle, what this does for Danielle Smith. If this puts her in a tough spot, I would argue that it doesn't, because she's navigated it rather deftly to this point. I know not everybody's happy with it, and they feel like, and I think there's some evidence to make this argument, that she's made life easier for would-be separatists by dropping the number of signatures that they have to get to force a referendum and that kind of thing. But she's not aligned herself with Alberta Separatists, so maybe it puts her in a tough spot there. What I would say is this stuff flares up as well when you have Donald Trump, you have sort of Doug Ford throwing that TV ad out there. You have Donald Trump all pissed off saying that he doesn't even want to meet with Mark Carney. And then people, it sort of gets to that conversation of, it reignites that conversation around is Canada working? I don't want to sit here and say is Canada broken? But that kind of idea of if Canada's not going to be able to get this deal done, what's the number one thing that will quell Alberta separatism is probably deals getting done by with the United States, a successful first year for Prime Minister Mark Carney, the approval of a new pipeline. That's what Danielle Smith's asking for. Let's say Carney and Smith come together and you get a nation-building project that involves energy expansion. Would Alberta be happy with that? Is it tougher to make the argument as a would-be separatist, as an organizer of this rally? Is it tougher to make the argument that Alberta should separate if Alberta just got a new pipeline? Absolutely it is. So I don't know. I would say that probably the toughest thing right now is that Canada and the U.S. appear to be right back where they started, or maybe even in a worse spot. It feels like there's been absolutely no progress. So let us know what you think. We also have a bunch of people pointing out, by the way, too. They're saying, you guys, you shouldn't forget that, Justin's dad, Pierre Trudeau, dated a ton of celebrities. And says, basically, he's just a chip off the old block.Here's a shot of
Baba Walters.
Pierre Elliott with Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand.
Yes,
Barbara Streisand.
Rumored. They say I'm on Reddit right now, saying he was rumored to have hooked up with Bianca Jagger, former wife of Mick Jagger. Says, but there's no photos of them together. Let's see who else. Kim Cattrall. There you are. Okay. Of course, Sex and the City alum, proud Canadian. Margot Kidder. Leona Boyd, a Canadian musician. Look at the guy who's a regular playboy with his standard boutonniere. Always had that.
This is why I'm on Duolingo right now. I'm trying to learn French. That's my 2026 goal.
Is that right?
You got French. You can speak French to the ladies. You don't need much looks.
That's your assessment of how he's pulling this off right now. Yeah, I'm curious to see what the M8 says. Ryan is sounding like the old lady gossip. I'm not the one that showed the photos. We
gotta talk about it.
I'm not the one that showed the photos.
I mean, this is
80s Fanify wonders why are we still talking about them. Yeah, this is, fair enough. I understand that a lot of people have, enough on this already. Harley says, Jessica, give me one reason to remain in Canada and I will listen. Other than that, you are the idiot. Okay. I guess I could sit here probably for like 3 hours and talk about reasons why I think that we should remain in Canada. I have yet to hear, Harley, one compelling reason that is like legitimate and real that would leave Alberta better off outside of Canada. And I've put a lot of thought into it, as I hope everybody does, before you decide. When I say something like I have planted my flag, like how often do you hear me talk like that on this show? I'm just really not convinced that Alberta would be better off in any way, shape, or form. I don't trust how an Alberta pension plan would be managed. No. I don't believe that Alberta would have better access to Tidewater for energy exports.
No, building pipelines would be harder.
I don't believe that Alberta would save money establishing its own police force, figuring out its own military, its passports. What currency are you going to use? Just think of like the logistics that would go into setting something like this up. Not to mention, I think just the idea of like the role that Alberta has in Canada and what it means to rally under the Canadian flag and the relationship that the provinces have and the great history of Canada and just a million things. And also, quite frankly, Harley, like the people I see leading the movement lack credibility and they sure as fuck don't speak for me. Like not a chance. I will notice one thing I noticed here and I'm sure that this is an accident. But Jeff Rath, who's been on the show before, Jeff Rath was on the show recently, like a couple months ago, the lawyer who's kind of like spearheading this whole thing. They've changed the spelling of his last name. And I don't think that he's doing this officially. I think it's a typo on the news release, but they've changed the spelling of his last name to add a W at the beginning. So now it's like Rath, like W-R-A-T-H.
What?
Like Rath? Jeff Rath. I think it's probably a mistake.
Okay.
But it just jumped off the page at me. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a bit of branding on his part. I'm not sure. Tracy D wonders, how come all these guys in blue at the Alberta Legislature, these separatists, how come they're not absolutely livid about the potential of the government invoking the notwithstanding clause? Said, I thought that they were all freedom lovers. This is what's going to happen. This is going to be the story this week. I mean, this could happen shortly after we wrap up this episode. Everybody's expecting Alberta teachers going to be ordered back into the classroom, and they're saying they're going to work to rule if they do it. Some teachers are saying that they will remain defiant and will not go back.
Yeah.
Others are talking about. I'm seeing it pop up here in the live chat as well. A lot of people are forecasting a general strike, which would be a pretty significant. A pretty significant development.
Yeah. So today they could, the government could choose to send them back. It would have to get ascension. So I don't know. I heard today it would happen by Wednesday or Thursday. But then I'm also hearing today on different sites I was on and even on live on air on radio this morning that, students are thinking of staging walkouts even if they go back. So it's just, all I'm thinking in my head is like, by the time this all gets done and everyone's back in the classroom, if they are, it's going to be at least 4 to 6 weeks that these kids have missed, especially when I'm thinking about grade 12 students.
Yeah.
That's a month and a half of school. That's a lot of curriculum.
It's a ton.
Gone.
Yeah, a lot of them are being, I don't know if they're exempted. I know we've got a lot of teachers in our chat right now and a ton of you are said we're going to read some emails here in a second. You can clarify for us how that works. I saw that because there were diploma exams, these grade 12 exams. These are huge. Yeah. The diplomas are like, what your diploma mark is.
They happen in January,
when I was there,
right?
well, there's some in November.
Oh, November too.
And it's also like, that's like 50% of your grade.
Yeah.
And then you're applying to get into university or post-secondary or whatever.
I was wondering that. Do you like lose a credit? You like, you know what I mean?
I saw that some of them are like exempted, but teachers can clarify for us. They'll sort it out for us. I know that we got a ton of you watching right now. We sure appreciate you. Also wanted to get into speaking of back to work, back to the class. Do you see this public servants ordered back to work? I want to get to that story in just a quick second. First, if you're watching this because you're keenly engaged in politics or the public service, if you're ready to enter the workforce, or at least you got eyes on a career that you've always thought about pursuing, but you haven't yet. Maybe you've just sort of perceived barriers, including getting out to a post-secondary institution. Maybe you don't live in one of the big cities, or maybe you're a caregiver. Maybe you're working 2 part-time jobs or 2 full-time jobs for that matter. I guarantee that you can find a fit at Athabasca University. It's Canada's open university, which means your only commute is to your device. Everything is online with their world-class accredited online degrees and courses. They're designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Check out athabascau.ca to get a better sense of how you can benefit from flexible study options, accessibility for students around the world, personalized learning plans, and a supportive community. While you're at it, by the way, if you're interested here in whether or not, this sort of development, how it'll play out, I should say, Alberta teachers ordered back to work. Jason Foster, Dr. Foster, joined us from Athabasca University on October 14th. He's an expert in labor relations, human resources, and he gave us his take on exactly how he thinks that'll happen. Again, that interview presented by Athabasca University. Albertans are winning big with Play Alberta, and that includes those who are getting excited about the Toronto Blue Jays headed over to Dodger Stadium. We have an exclusive offer for Real Talkers right now, a $50 free bet when you deposit $50 on the Play Alberta app, or if you visit playalberta.ca. There's no catch. You just have to know the promo code Ryan50. That's Ryan50, a $50 free bet when you make a $50 deposit at playalberta.ca or on the Play Alberta app. Ryan50, that's Ryan50. UCAN Youth Services, it's a huge year for this nonprofit operating out of Alberta's capital city, working with hundreds of young people, 12 to 25, helping them out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can learn more about the work that they do, including the Verdo Project. This is basically an earn while you learn opportunity for 18 to 24-year-olds that are trying to enter the workforce or maybe even just get back to school. You're going to earn a living allowance while you participate. 8 consecutive weeks of programming, which means they're basically going to get you set to enter the workforce with some of the basic skills, and there's great employment opportunities that come with it. I know that some of you are going to be listening to this and you're thinking of someone in particular, a young person for whom this could be a perfect fit. Again, you can find the details at ucan.ca. So yeah, this announcement made as we were breaking on Friday. I'm not sure if you saw it, Johnny, but no more hybrid work for the Alberta Public Service. And that means that public sector workers, Alberta's public servants, will no longer be enjoying the hybrid 3 days in the office, 2 days at home arrangement. On Friday, the Deputy Minister's Council announcing the end to the Alberta Public Service interim hybrid work policy. That'll be effective February of next year. So you've still got a few months. That'll require all provincial employees to return full-time in-office brick and mortar 5 days per week, just like it was before COVID. This is a pretty big number of employees. If you look at it back in August, a couple of months ago, about 44% of the public sector workforce, which is about 12,500 provincial employees, were participating in those hybrid work routines that I know that a lot of people, including federal public servants, have really gotten used to. But in March of 2022, when the GOA lifted that work from home order related to public health order, this interim policy was allowing people to work from home for up to 2 days per week. The government says no more And we're seeing some different responses from people. We were getting some letters, some emails from Real Talkers to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I see our friend Cheryl Watson here, who's chair of the Edmonton Downtown Revitalization Coalition, says they commend the GOA for taking this important step to bring more people back to Edmonton's downtown. I also remember the last time we brought this up on the show, the last time we talked about this, we had a ton of people really defending, I don't know if I say workers' rights, but really defending programs that allowed people to work from home and stay home. So it'll be interesting to see how this lands, but it's non-negotiable. This is happening again in February of 2026.
Oh, I can't wait to see all you employees messing up my commute to work already. It's already pretty bad, and now you're going to be back to work. I wish they would stay hybrid, if nothing else, just to make my commute a little easier.
Just to make
but
it.
I'm a fan of hybrid work. I think we should all be hybriding in whatever capacity we can, if it's allowable. For guys like us, of course, we got to come in. We got to do our show in the studio. But I mean, if you can give someone 2 days a week at home, if you can bookend their week and give them a nice, relaxing weekend, and they just ease into work on Monday and ease out of it on Friday, or put it in the middle of the week, I just feel like today, when a lot of your work is in a cubicle or at a desk or in front of a screen or multiple screens, I feel like being at home, especially if you got kids, if you got other responsibilities, maybe if you're getting older, I just feel like it can help. It can benefit employers. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think you can make a compelling argument. I think you can argue it from both sides on this one. I'm personally wired to I prefer to be in a workplace. I think that people are more productive in a workplace. I think that happy accidents happen with creativity and collaboration and that sort of a thing. But I also hear compelling arguments like from you. Russ sent us an email about this to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and he said, basically what I'm doing is we hung on to this until this was timely again because I wanted to read it. Although Russ sent it to us back in September, but he says, Jess, well, I'm an OG work from home employee. He says, I've been doing it for like almost 14 years. He's a sales rep for an electronics company. Says, he's seen his role change quite a bit over the years. Russ says, I'm now responsible for all my company's business in Western Canada, attaboy, as well as for a few big national accounts. Says, I used to spend more time out of the house and in my retail partner's business to meet and interact with staff. But as my role has grown, I have so much work that keeps me at my desk, so much geography to manage, you just can't do it all. So many weeks I'm home 5 days of the week for work. Although, get this, he says he travels around 60 nights a year. That'd be a grind. Russ says, I couldn't imagine going to work in a conventional office at this point. I'm very productive at home. I have a dedicated space, like a home office. And, he says, commuting, prevents kind of this slippery slope of home life mixing in. Mentally, when I'm in my office at work, he says, I don't even go into that room when I'm not working, put it that way. He says, it works. But that said Russ, I do occasionally stick handle a load of laundry or the odd errand. He says, weekly haircuts with no waits midweek are a perk. Says I can walk my dog a couple more kilometers over lunch, but my employer wins too. He said, like I said, I have no commute. So when projects need more time, I've got it. I'm not really giving up my time so much. Sometimes I can take a meeting on my patio. And he says, not to butter you guys up and get my email read. He says, but it also allows me to have Real Talk on live most mornings. Okay, Russ, now I support it. He says, and if I travel, I can binge while I work and catch up. I always have something on in the background. Having another personal computer, a high-end stereo in my office. I couldn't do that in a workplace. So sometimes I'm working through a boring Excel file, listening to some fantastic tunes. Russ says, let's acknowledge COVID changed the workplace. Teams, or Zoom or whatever is a thing now. And it really changed the work from home environment. He says, I'm way more connected to my coworkers than I used to be. And I get pulled into impromptu meetings, water cooler talk, even though my coworkers are in Mississauga. Finds them on Teams. He says, I've stepped up my game. I know a lot of people have. He says, I now have a high-quality camera, microphone, so my meeting presence is very high quality. And he says, and I very, very rarely feel left out. Russ says, at the end of the day, I save money. I save wear and tear on my vehicle with no commute. It says my environmental impact is smaller. I have fewer wardrobe expenses. I can do a lot of my day in jeans and a hoodie or even shorts. My family gets more of me when I'm not traveling, but my employer gets more of me too. When you have an extra hour a day not commuting and being aggravated by that, everybody wins. I can still pick up my kid from school I'm not going out for lunch or buying coffee, so I'm saving money. There's very little food waste at our house as I'm eating all the leftovers. I love that he's just ticking off, every single thing, every benefit. He says, and I fresh grind coffee at home every single day, so it's perfect. He says, plus nobody heating fish in the microwave. Sounds like he's got PTSD from that. We've all experienced that.
We've all done it.
Russ says, bottom line, I think my employer wins with me working remotely. Yes, it's necessitated by my role, but functionally it's better for them, and my personal and financial life is richer for it too.
There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good summary. I feel differently, but what am I going to tell Russ that he doesn't know what he's talking about? I think that he summed it. He summed it up in a really great way there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. All those things he checked off on the box, I think they can be good for employers. I think I just in my head, I'm like, what do I want? Do I want someone who drags into work and doesn't want to be there, or do I want someone who is grateful and appreciative of the fact that they can stay home on a busy day with the kids, or on a day where they're not feeling with everything going on in the world, sometimes you just don't want to drag your ass to the car, get in 30 minutes of traffic, come all the way downtown. You spill coffee. You ever had one of those mornings everything goes wrong?
Yeah.
Everything goes wrong. You come out to the car and you drop your gloves in the puddle, and then you get into the car, you turn it on, and you spill the coffee on your shirt, and then you get to work and you trip and everything cup falls out of your bag. One of those days, if you could just turn around and be like, you know what, today it's just this is going to be a redo tomorrow. Something's just off. And you could go home and still accomplish everything.
Yeah.
I think that's a bonus.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, they work, every second Friday is from home, which basically I think he says means that every second Friday is off. But that's fine. And also know him.
I don't mean that it's like you're
but his
slacking.
line, no. And I don't mean to imply that either, but that's he also busts his ass at his job. And people have different jobs. If you work in manufacturing or you work in retail,
you gotta be there.
You got to be there. Your 9 to 5 is
you work at a registry
8:59
or
to
whatever.
5:01. But if your job is just to get the job done by the end of the week, or to just stay on top of your client relations, I mean, look at your job. Look what you do for us. There's times where it's you're hard fixed in the chair because we're live streaming, presented by California Closets, weekdays at 8:30 Mountain Time. But there's other times where we need something from you, or you're working on something without even telling me at 1 a.m, and we got a new bit of content. So it's just different jobs carry different obligations, different responsibilities, different availability, right?
I think just keeping the option open to be flexible. I don't like shutting the door totally. This thing you just read about, employees going back. It's kind of like shutting the door to it altogether.
Yeah.
I don't mind calling everyone back and saying that, the pandemic is now, 4 years behind us or whatever. And, not to say that COVID, I talked to some nurses now. There's, the newest strain is making its rounds right now before the winter here. A lot of people getting sick. But what I'm saying is, it's fine to say, hey, we're going to go back to work. But I just like leaving the door open, especially for, we know people in content creation, in, data entry, all these jobs. We know a lot of people in these buildings who we don't see them some days, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're not working. They're probably working their ass off from home, even though we're not seeing their faces, right? So, But I do agree, you go into a registry, you got to see someone behind the desk. You go into a supermarket, there's got to be someone there. Maybe eventually there won't be. There'll just be a security guard and self checkouts. But I just think leaving the door open is great. And employers now are realizing that keeping people mentally healthy and happy is just going to increase productivity, right?
This Alberta rally, what are they calling it again? I Am Alberta. The I Am Alberta rally.
Is that what it's called?
I Am Alberta, I guess is what it was called. They say it ignites unstoppable momentum for sovereignty.
I don't know. This is most of Canadians going to get mad here.
Yeah, I know, right?
I am Canadian. I am
Alberta. I see some people in the chat saying that they talked to people who had been misled, who believed it was just like a rally to be at if you were proud about Alberta. They didn't realize it was about separation. I don't know. If I was there, I wasn't there, but I would say I think you'd probably figure it out. You'd probably figure it out pretty damn quick.
That's playing dumb.
What it was all about. I see Greg in our chat says there were only 12 counter protesters. The number of counter protesters is not who cares? All this obsession with numbers. Here's what I think. I will say there were a lot of people down there. I'm also not concerned that there weren't about a bunch of counter protesters. It's like one of the nice final Sundays, or what was it, Saturday this weekend? One of the nice final Saturdays of the heading into the fall before the snow flies, and you're going to go and like have arguments with a bunch of people about stuff. Like what would draw a counter protester in their right mind to be down there? And I would also say that anybody that is passionate about Alberta's place in Canada was probably out this weekend collecting signatures for the Forever Canadian movement.
Which I wanted to mention that because I saw a post 3 hours ago that said, blah, 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 made a stop in Cochrane. It was a pleasure to meet. Campaign has officially surpassed its goal of 300,000 signatures.
Awesome.
This is from Peter Guthrie. So I think it happened.
Peter Guthrie of the PCs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this happened. We're not sure, but we had, Thomas on last week.
That's
and
right.
They were 40,000 away, and he was hitting a bunch of big spots over the weekend.
Yeah,
so.
he was one of the interesting things that he kind of told us, and I don't remember if he told us this on or off camera, so I'll just repeat it, but he may have said it during the interview, but he was like, they weren't also sure because they've had so many, did he say 6,500 volunteers collecting signatures? And they haven't received them all in, so there could be somebody hanging on to like 2,000 signatures or 500 signatures, so they get those all submitted, and then we're talking to you on the 27th of October. The 28th is when they make that presentation. And then they got to count them all. So,
and then one more thing before you go to talking to some other stuff. Tony wants to know, what is that bottle on the table?
Well, Tony, thanks for asking. So yeah, we're very proud of a new presenting sponsorship with the show. You're going to be hearing on alternating days, RapidX Financial, which you can check out online if you're looking for like a Canadian incredible place to buy or sell Bitcoin or crypto. Check out rapidxfinancial.com. We know the people behind it, bulletproof reputations, and they're doing an amazing job. This is Canada's trusted platform for buying and selling crypto online, in person, or at more than 100 locations nationwide. RapidXFinancial.com and Hansen Distillery the other days. And so this is, look at that, Johnny. That's their 5-year whiskey, right? That's a beautiful, the Northern Eyes.
Hold it up here.
The Northern Eyes whiskey. This is their 5-year whiskey. And this will come with all of the, the things we would say, which is like, please enjoy responsibly and everything like that. But we're so proud to partner with Hansen Distillery on this. They're going to be presenting Real Talk episodes over the next year. And we're going to be proudly serving Hansen at our studio mixers and gatherings. And we will also have some, you're not actually legally allowed to give away booze. So we'll find creative ways to say thank you to our Patreon supporters, our YouTube channel subscribers and that. But I would say that some of you shouldn't be shocked if you find a bottle of Hansen on your shelf within the next 12 months.
We could do some things like we'll have Supriya hold it and say the coolest mom in the world holding the coolest small batch whiskey in the province.
Yeah. I got this. Who's this Harley motherfucker in my chat today? Ryan is certainly showing his lack of knowledge on the subject today. I guess that's why I had so many supporters. Like, Harley, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. But here's the thing is, like, all of you Alberta Separatists think you're smarter than you are. And that includes you. And so, like, and I'm not trying to be an asshole. And I really want to make sure that through this, I remind myself first and this audience subsequently that we are all Albertans, or we're all Canadians, or this show obviously has a bigger reach, but those of us that have a vested interest in the future of Alberta in or outside of Canada are going to feel passionately about it. And I feel passionately like it's a really stupid idea. And you may feel passionately that it's a really stupid idea to stay. And the number one thing about the freedom that we enjoy is that you and I can both vociferously disagree on this, but like I said, I have yet to hear a compelling and credible reason to believe that Alberta would be better off outside of Canada. At the end of the day, if this does come down to a vote, and I said it directly to the Premier on this show, and I've said it a million times, take it to a vote. Let's have a referendum so we can put it to the people and see where it goes. And at the end of the day, I hope, Johnny, that we would see better voter turnout than we did at the Alberta municipal elections, in particular in the city of Edmonton. 30% voter turnout, absolutely pathetic. And you wonder who would be more motivated. I will tell you, I will do everything in my power to motivate people to show up and to vote however they're going to vote, but to participate in the process. But I want to see what the number is. We hear from pollsters that are estimating it. They'll say between a quarter and a third of Albertans believe that Alberta would be better off separated from Canada. That's a shocking number to me. It's a shocking number to believe that if I'm in a restaurant or a hockey game or a grocery store, that 1 in 3 people there, 1 in 3 people walking down the sidewalk would rather leave Canada. I find it hard to believe. And I know that some of the more ambitious prognostication, people believe that it's half and half, that it's 50-50. And I think that's why you have like Supriya on the show today asking us to Alberta-splain to her what we're seeing here, because Quebec's been through it. And the whole country went through it. I was a young guy at the time, relatively speaking, and I remember that. I remember how tight that vote was. And I remember kind of just as somebody, halfway across the country watching it going, gosh, like, I don't want Quebec to leave. Quebec, can be annoying at times. And also,
same
I think,
feeling,
but I think deep down inside, I think Alberta has a lot of admiration for Quebec and how Quebec has carved out its niche. And Quebec politicians are somewhat hesitant to grant Alberta that same sort of a praise as this idea of like a unique society. But I think Albertans could take a page or two from Quebec's model and learn from that. Want to give a shout out to RH, who's
donation.
Just kicked $100 into our YouTube super chat. RH, that's incredible. That's how you get your comment read right away. And RH says, when are these demonstrators, when are these separatists having their mass packing up and moving south event? Says, I'll bet that there will be no counter protest for that either. And yes, they do think they're smarter than they are, but so did the American Confederates. Racism, treason, and all that they emulate. That from RH. Thank you for your contribution. That's huge, and that really means a lot to us. I did see somebody else in the chat. I mean, our chat's moving fast today. The live tuning audience is really on it today, but I wanted to read this, and somebody basically said, like, these demonstrators, these Alberta separatists, this is Bunny Slippers, says, look what's going on with MAGA, with the MAGA movement right now. You are being taken for a ride, and it's sad that you don't realize it. Others, I mean, JJ says, whoa, 10,000 of the I Seen It crew. Listen, we can have some fun with this. Obviously, I'm also not trying to like be a dick. And I'm not trying to, and I know that there's a lot of people. I have personal friends. I have family members who want Alberta to leave Canada. Okay, so I'm not going to go on some big thing about how everybody who wants to leave is an idiot and a moron, and that's not the tone I want to take. It's not the tone that the show is going to take. I'm not going to mince my words. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, and I'm happy to debate it with folks. And more importantly, the bigger promise that we'll make to you as the audience is that we will bring credible people on. Right? We'll bring economists on. We'll bring public security experts on. We'll bring experts in politics and policing. We'll take a look at Brexit and why it was a huge failure and blew up in the face of the British. We'll have these conversations. I promise you that. This is obviously not going anywhere. Well, at least for now. Although I will say, like, you have to imagine that Mark Carney's watching this. He's somewhere in Japan or South Korea right now. He's spent the past few days in Asia right now. You guarantee it's on his radar. And I'd be curious to know what that does, a demonstration like that, if anything, to further spur on conversations between the province of Alberta, Danielle Smith and Mark Carney. As you know, she's kind of put them on the clock. They've got the Grey Cup circled. They want to be able to make an announcement by then. I think that might be a little bit optimistic, but you never know what might happen. Basically, what Alberta's asking for is for Ottawa to commit to lifting, let's just say kicking down the hurdles that stand in the way, the regulatory processes that stand in the way of investor confidence in getting a new pipeline built. So the government of Alberta has said that they're going to do everything that it can, shy of or short of paying for it. Danielle Smith has been very clear, said the province of Alberta will not pay for a new pipeline, but they're going to advocate for it. They're going to champion it. And, would that represent one of those nation-building projects? If you want to hear, I mean, a week ago, it was the 20th of October, Supriya and I were on and spent like a good part of our time, I think it was probably about 10 minutes, talking about what qualifies as a nation-building project. And I think it was Yttrium, wasn't it? Yttrium, I don't know if you follow us on TikTok or Instagram, or follow our YouTube shorts, but like you led off. I read Yttrium's comment in the live chat, which kicked off this post, which did really well, asking what is a nation-building project. And Yttrium's big point was that it should be for, public money should go to public infrastructure. Said this, these private industry projects like a pipeline shouldn't qualify as nation building. I argue the case that I think it boosts Canada's economy, it boosts employment, it helps more than one province. Some of you think I'm bang on, some of you think I'm a fool. That's perfectly fine. You can always send us a note to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I wanted to get to a couple of your emails to that address before we get to our positive reflection for the day, proudly presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. We got a great email from Nejolla. This kind of one of the themes last week was, I'm going to call it the debacle that was Edmonton's election. And that's not taking away from the mayor-elect, Andrew Knack. They're swearing in, by the way, councillors are on Wednesday, so it's a big week for them. Congratulations to everybody that sought and fought for and won a council seat, that won a school trustee seat all across the province of Alberta. To all of you for participating in the democratic process, that's great. In Edmonton, it's a mess. And the recounts were going sideways, and they were having confusion, and results weren't released for a number of days. People waiting 2.5 hours. You know all the deal. I don't have to rehash it. Nejolla writes into the show and says, Jespo, really proud of Real Talk, by the way, for scoring that exclusive with the Prime Minister back in September. That was monumental. She says, I have been watching your Edmonton election coverage. Says, I heard on the radio that they were required more counters. They needed more counters. They were understaffed. She says, so I threw my name in the ring. I'm a supporter of hand counting, and even though there may be mistakes, there are logical ways to counter human error and super blunders. She says, I was election day chair for Thomas Lukazik for 3 elections, and I have trained and recruited scrutineers. Nejolla knows what you need to do early in an email to establish your credibility. She says, here's my observations. She says, Elections Edmonton likely hired the same people who worked past elections, older, mostly retired, likely not as tech savvy as other people. She says, I'm no spring chicken. She says, the polling station that I was at didn't have a big lineup at closing time. The last elector was out the door 10 after 8. We weren't allowed to start counting until after the election officer submitted the recorded number of electors and unused ballots to Elections Edmonton. Shockingly, that took over an hour. He couldn't figure it out. One of the counters went and helped him out. Says for the count itself, I captained the mayoral race table. So Nejolla was the big cheese at that table. Says I made sure that each person had a division of candidates so that one person didn't have a huge pile more than the other frontrunners. When the first count was finished, it was passed to the secondary counter. I asked that person to also review the name on the ballot, not just count the papers in front of them. If there was any discrepancy, we went to a third person for the count. Nejolla says they were done by 11:15 p.m. There were no instructions given on the importance of checking the ballot and the name. Just count the ballots in front of you. So I chalk all of this up to inadequate training and lack of proper planning on what could go wrong. She says, my other beef is with the scrutineers, municipal scrutineers. So like you guys know how it goes. Like each campaign can provide their own people to sort of have eyes on it, right? These scrutineers keeping an eye on it, making sure there's no funny business. Says municipal scrutineers kept interrupting the process and talking to counters, especially in the polling station I was in. He was issuing instructions inappropriately, had the Jays game blaring on his phone. I mean, who could blame him? But still, turn the volume down, buddy. Says I had to ask him to shut it off. In provincial elections, scrutineers are silent. They only speak up for a ballot if their candidate is rejected or another blatant error is apparent. Says I could see some of the more aggressive scrutineers, she says, from Better Edmonton, interfering this way and affecting the efficacy of the counters. Nejolla says, in my humble opinion, I think Elections Edmonton put the same old workers into senior positions without knowing if they could do the jobs under the current guidelines or do it with the speed required to keep things running efficiently. She says, by the way, I was also the volunteer coordinator for the Forever Canadian campaign, and I got all the volunteers started. She says, I left the campaign after 5 weeks, but it was a pleasure to get the ball rolling. And it was the only time that I worked from 6:30 in the morning to midnight every day without complaining about the hours. I'm so proud of how Albertans come together over this. The silent majority will be silent no longer. That from Nejolla. Wow. And how about this from Christine, who's just kicked another 50 into our YouTube live chat. You guys, this is incredible, into our super chat. Christine says, I'll just read it. Thank you. She says, don't let toxic people get you down. You guys rock. Do a fabulous service for Albertans and all Canadians. The show is outstanding. You're a terrific person. You make my day. Oh, my gosh. Are you kidding me, Christine? Wow. Thank you. We don't let toxic people get us down. Honestly, I mean, Johnny and I have a good kind of a process after each show. We just debrief. We have a laugh. We put some music on. We start putting our shorts out and our content, working on the next day's show. And I don't know. I wouldn't say, like, I so appreciate that sentiment, Christine. And you've just, like, As we say, you filled our bucket, but you guys don't worry about us. This show, there's something very empowering that comes with knowing where you stand, and that comes with knowing that you have the backing of incredible sponsors and an engaged, intelligent audience. And that's why Johnny and I and the team behind the scenes are thrilled and honored to do this every single day. It's going to be interesting to see. And I see a lot of you are still chatting. I mean, there's just a ton of comments here on this I Am Alberta rally over the weekend, and there's some of you in here, obviously, proud of your position that you think Alberta should leave Canada, and some of you are obviously feeling very strongly in the different direction. And I guess at the end of the day, right now, it reiterates to me that this is a diverse audience with diverse perspectives, and that is just a huge feather in the cap for this show. We don't come on here to preach one particular doctrine, and I don't believe that there's always just one right answer for everything, maybe except for this one, John. The right answer is Alberta staying in Canada. But I do think that Alberta has valid issues. I think that Albertans are correct to point out that the federal government over the past 10 years did impose restrictions and impose new laws that made it more difficult for Alberta to realize its economic potential. This brings us back to the debate on that intersection of the environment and the economy, and I'm happy to let you know that we do have a Real Talk Roundtable coming up around that ahead of the COP conference. That is going to be, as a matter of fact, this Friday, John, the 31st of October.
Okay.
Which means that I will not be dressing up as like Blippi or some other Halloween costume because I will have to come across as credible in conducting that roundtable on Friday.
We're not dressing up on Friday?
You can.
No, I'm good.
I don't know if I could. I wonder if I could get away with moderating a Real Talk Roundtable dressed up as like Blip. Are you familiar with the Blippi reference? You know
I am, even though I don't have les enfants.
Les enfants.
See how I'm mixing in? I'm already Duolingo. But I'm aware of Blippi, and I'm aware of the hoopla around the changing of the actor and how everyone was so upset that they changed Blippi.
They changed Blippi.
They changed the Blippi, and
yeah.
But yeah, Blippi's very poputy, isn't he?
Dude, you like the guy's like his videos get like 300 million views.
Yeah,
I'm just like, what? Why are we?
Which is,
what we should be doing is
it's kind of a bad thing. It makes me think that a lot of parents are, but I get it. It's a tool. You put them in front of it, and there they go.
Sometimes you just need. Sometimes you just need a minute as a parent.
You just need a shower.
When Blippi can take over. I'm trying to find something really quickly because is it Emily in our chat that says Ryan as Blippi would be mwah, and I'm just trying to see if I can find photographic
I'll dress up as
a
separatist on Friday. How about that? I'll come
what
in.
What would you wear if you were going to
all
dress
blue?
up?
I'll have the flag over my shoulder. I'll have the what is the document everyone keeps referring to? The value of freedom.
Yeah.
Have it written out on a scroll.
Here. Show the screen for a second. This is my. This is for you, Emily. If you're watching us on YouTube or on our live stream, here you go. Here's Jespo to Blippi in 3, 2, 1, and. That's me as Blippi right there, guys.
That's a pretty good Blippi.
That's not too bad, right?
That's
there you go.
Good.
That was for Noah Bear's 3rd birthday.
There you go.
Wyatt was Levi, who's like Blippi's little helper. So there you go. Still working on our Halloween costume. I'm concerned if like the people that dress up as the Alberta Separatists for Halloween. Number one, you might find yourself in a fist fight at your Halloween party. But number two, in so many ways, as the Canadian flag was temporarily co-opted by the Freedom Convoy, or as evangelicals feel like their rainbow flag has been co-opted by the gays. I wonder, I never want to get to a point where I am feeling sick about seeing the Alberta flag fly.
Not at all.
Like our friends at Friesen Brothers, one of the things they do that I love, Friesen Brothers proudly Alberta grown, Alberta owned, right? And they've been like in the fabric, they're like woven into the fabric of Alberta communities for 70 years. They fly these huge Alberta flags outside their stores, and it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
And I just love it. Yeah. And this is not Friesen Brothers sending out the signal for separation. Also, I don't speak for Friesen Brothers. Let me be clear about that. But I I'm proud of the Alberta flag.
Sure.
I love the Alberta flag. So,
well, I love Alberta, and that's why I'm hot and cold on the separatist thing, because it's we're laughing, we're taking shots at them or whatever, and it's funny, but in the end, these are people that love this province, and I love this province too. So in the back of my mind, it convinces me that, like, okay, if someone can show these people that staying in Canada is the better route, like the better way to get pipelines to Tidewater and the better way to get, a better police force and your pension's going to be more secure and all these things, wouldn't it stand to reason that they could be convinced to stay? But that's not what I see. I see people just wanting to separate strictly for the reason of separation, right?
Yeah.
Just to become an independent nation, which is, I mean, you can weigh back and forth. Nobody knows for sure what would happen, but it's just far too risky. It's far too risky a transition, and it would take far too long to recover from.
Yeah, I see that some of you, did RH just throw another 100 into the chat?
He's like at the strip club right now. He's like
Just making it rain.
He's making it rain in here.
I remember last time RH showed up. This is a friend of ours. RH, correct me if I'm wrong. Thunder Bay, right? I think off the top of my head, I don't soon forget that. I remember we sent RH
we got to read it now.
A whole merch package, because I was just like, you just knocked our socks off, and you're doing it again. Another $100. You thanks, man. You're helping us grow this show, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. $200 in the show, amazing. Says, I agree with Albertans who have legitimate beefs with Ottawa on everything from energy to firearms legislation, but that's a far cry from legitimizing the Handmaid's Tale, white nationalist, neo-Confederate, hemispheric plantation delusions of the separatists. I wish I had like an SM58 mic here. I could just go like this and just drop it like RH just did.
He's not wrong, and that's the thing. People like it, we don't want to be equated to these other people. Alberta Separatists say, well, why are they at the rallies then? You know what I mean? Why are these groups intertwined with the whole movement? Like, you can't run away from that. You can't just turn a blind eye to the fact that these Proud Boy-esque groups are at the rallies, right?
Yeah, and not calling everybody there that. It's funny, like, I want to be like, you want to call a spade, and I would say, like, generally speaking, and you got to be careful when you generalize around groups, right? Like, and this is something I learned. I've shared this with you guys before. About COVID, like some of my early COVID commentary, I looked back and I was like, like I wasn't gracious. I wasn't, because I felt strongly about it, and people are dying and like people are isolating, and it was horrible and hard for everybody. And like, I understand why some people are furious that they had to like say goodbye to a loved one over a Zoom call or through a pane of glass. And like, I get it. I do. And I also felt strongly that when like medical experts, like whether or not you like love Theresa Tam or however you felt about, whoever it was in each of the provinces, I felt like we sort of started getting to know these chief medical officers of health on a first name basis, or felt like we knew them across the country. And they were telling us as best they could tell, working with virologists and all these, long time scientists and researchers, that they're trying to get this virus figured out. And they don't even really know where it started or how it started, and everybody has their theories, and they're trying to like flatten the curve. And guys, you can help by wearing a mask. And when there's a vaccine, remember, when there's a vaccine, we'll ask everybody to get vaccinated. And then you had a group of people that were like, just so upset that like their church congregation couldn't gather, or like their beer club couldn't get together, or these inconveniences, that they would step out and cause problems. You remember the Edson party, the COVID party, they called it, and people went there to like get COVID in the town of Edson. And by the way, my friends in Edson, I'm not taking a big dump on you, Edson, but like, they figured that like the herd immunity kind of idea, if everybody got sick, then they could figure it out. Edson, I guess, at that point, the people at that party thought that they were smarter than all the medical reasoners. And what happened? Like, how old was the guy? He was like 48 or something, and a 16-year-old kid, and they both died in hospital. There was like remember, he was including at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. There were like, I think more than a dozen people. I'm going off memory here. I might be off a bit on the details. You can Google it, but they like filled the ICU basically with people from this Edson COVID party, and it was infuriating. But I look back on that time and it just in reflection, which I hope that we all do from time to time, and some of the things I said about the anti-vaxxers and about the people that weren't kind of getting on board were not gracious. And also at that time, I felt like it was important that people with public platforms crack the whip a little bit and say what needed to be said to try to convince people to do everything they could to help their fellow human beings. I don't want conversation about Alberta separation and sovereignty to devolve to that, where we start, making, and I'm talking mostly to myself first and to all of you second. I love you guys, but this is a lecture to me. I don't want this to turn into me calling them a bunch of idiots and morons. But like, I look at this and it's like, to me, it's the most unpatriotic thing that you can do. And I respect their right to do it. But like, you better believe I'm going to fight like hell against it. That's kind of where I stand on it. And so I don't want this to devolve to name calling. I don't want it to devolve to insults, but yeah, you do see some common threads and some common themes at these rallies, or at least among a lot of the supporters or organizers of these rallies, and things that they have previously organized or supported, right? And like, draw direct lines. You're not a conspiracy theorist if you do that. Renee kicking in $7 in the super chat. Thank you so much. He says groups are being fed information by foreign deep pockets. And this says, I'm sorry, I can't afford $100. Renee, don't worry about $100 is phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. And then, whoa, what's going on here? RH with another 10 says the verb, is it gerund or present participle? I'm going to start sounding like an idiot. Legitimizing says to make legitimate, to justify, to make lawful. The regime was not legitimized by popular support. Kenzie says people were forced during COVID. Yeah, of course they were. 100%. People got fired for not complying. Like, yeah. Part of me is like, let's not relitigate that right now. And then part of me is like, why not? If not here, then where? Yeah. Tommy says, I couldn't eat at a restaurant. Okay, sure. Boomshanker X says, I would prefer that people are allowed to fly whatever flag they want. That way I know who to avoid. Fair enough. Tracy says, the inability to be flexible in your thinking is a sign of low intelligence. Erika wrote in, and I wanted to get to this. This is going to be our positive reflection today, Johnny. But before we do, Laura on Sunday took the time to send us an email. This landed in our inbox 12 hours ago. It says union activist clarification. And this is music to our ears. Laura opens, says, as a new fan of the show, welcome, Laura. It says, I recently watched your episode on the 24th of October with Cheryl Oates, Erika Brudies from The Discourse. She says, I also watched that show. So it says, I'm a union activist with AUPE, the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees. I hope you'll consider sharing my views on your show. Yes, we have considered, Laura. It says, my union represents many healthcare workers in several bargaining contracts, 2 of which are employed by Alberta Health Services directly. ANC, which is nursing care, represents thousands of LPNs, licensed practical nurses, and HCAs, healthcare aides. They've been in bargaining since April of last year, and they have faced abhorrent conditions from the employer. Currently, LPNs do approximately 84% of the in-scope work of our colleagues, RNs, registered nurses, in the United Nurses of Alberta, while LPNs are receiving 55% of the pay of RNs. I didn't know that. She says the current deal that the employer had with mediation was a flat 12%. No consideration of in-scope work that LPNs do in Alberta, which is the highest in the country. And this was before the registered nurses, the RNs, accepted their deal earlier this year, which, despite advertisements sent by the government regarding this ongoing teachers' labor dispute, was not 12% over 4 years. We've heard this before. Laura says, which is what they're currently offering the ATA, the Alberta teachers. The deal that the UNA, the United Nurses of Alberta, accepted was complex, and it included an immediate step up for their bargaining unit, approximately 5% in wage that would make hiring pay and top pay higher, a review of benefits and flex spending accounts with added bonuses for long service employees, better language on overtime and scheduling, and approximately 15% in wage gains directly over 4 years. Says the step up plus the direct wage increases is estimated over 4 years to be worth about 20%, not 12%. While the government claims that the United Nurses accepted 12%, it's not just a lie. It undermines the ATA's position. It undermines the AUPE position for our nurses and for my bargaining unit, General Support Services, GSS. And it disrespects the fact that multiple governments promised to catch up workers because of the bad times of low oil prices and obviously the pandemic. Laura says the real problem is government mismanagement. If they would cease giving sweetheart deals to their corporate donors and their crony friends in secret handshakes, if they would raise taxes to be equal to the next lowest in Canada, she's not saying make them the highest, If they stopped overtly using resources to step on trans rights and to stifle environmental energy projects, she's talking about the renewables ban, then we would actually have the money to make sure that Albertan workers could afford to live here and provide the quality services that we're all so proud of. She says, stop tax breaks to giant corporations. Keep the money here in Alberta. That's the real Alberta advantage. She signs off, thank you for your consideration. That was a fantastic email, Laura. Thanks very much. You can send us an email anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Positive reflections in a moment, but I did just mention the Royal Alexandra Hospital and the incredible work that they did, that their teams did there through the pandemic. You know, you look at it, that pandemic period, so many will remember the visuals of those doctors and nurses and all kinds of healthcare workers, porters, janitors, everybody else that was showing up to work every single day at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. And then you look, and I mean this respectfully, over the time that this hospital's been serving Canadians, 125 years, and you realize that's just a blip on the radar, right? The 4 years or so of COVID, 3-4 years of COVID. If you think of what they've seen through 125 years, right? Individuals coming back from serving their countries in World War, 1 and 2, or you want to take your pick. Think of how many babies have been born there. Think of how many families have said goodbye to loved ones. Think of how many cancer surgeries or hip replacements. You get the point? 125 years at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. We're obviously enthusiastic about it, which is why we're working with the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation to ensure that this crown jewel of Canadian healthcare is well set up for the next 125 years and beyond. Every Tuesday on the show for the next number of months, you're going to be hearing echoes of the Alex. These are stories of individuals or families that have greatly benefited or seen their lives changed by interactions at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. And we encourage you to consider a donation, if you're able, to the next 125 years of this iconic healthcare institution. You can check out givetoroyalalex.org. All right. Well, every Monday, typically, or at least the first episode of every week, our friends at Solar by Kuby remind us that, there's so much life and there's so much joy and encouragement outside the news cycle. And that's why they're proud to present Positive Reflections, presented weekly here on Real Talk. This one from Erika. This is maybe taking it in a bit of a different direction. Erika's subject line caught our attention, but it works as a positive reflection. The subject, a few tears, but inspiration too. Erika says, Jespo, Johnny, driving to hockey with my little U11 star. I was catching up on Real Talk. Erika, thanks very much. She says, I'm a listener from the very beginning, you guys, and a proud owner of a Kuby solar system based on your recommendations. Erika, way to go. She says, by the way, Friesen Brothers is my happy place, even though I have to drive a long way to get to one. Thank you for those. She says, I live in a remote rural area. I'm a teacher and I'm a municipal councillor, ready to get started on my second term. Erika says, I've been feeling so low lately. Like locally, it's a tough crowd, so I try not to get too riled up, but I'm well known for, being political, you might say. She says, don't you feel like this current government is just pulling a little like mother knows best bullshit? She says, I don't feel like they're looking out for the best interests of Albertans. I don't feel like they're trusting professionals. I don't feel like they're listening to us everyday citizens, and it's costing us time with strikes, money with coal company settlements and those weird Tylenol deals, all while saying they've got no money where we need it the most. She says, your listener on Friday, maybe it was the flamethrower, summed up that teacher conversation so well. And she says, who am I kidding? I don't want to get into it any further, but I always want to get into it further. Sometimes to what end? She says, there's so many wonderful advocates that can sum it up much better. She says, I think that Erika and Cheryl that join you on the show are great, and I do love their platform. They're brilliant. They're excellent communicators. But Erika kind of brings that attitude that I see rurally here, repeating talking points. Erika says, well, shit, maybe she writes the talking points. I don't know. She says, but she talks about how she has a parent with kid in school, so she, understands the minds and hearts and experiences of teachers and then belittles the profession. It's just so difficult to battle that mindset. Teaching is a job like no other, says Erika. I give so much to my day and other people's children that it's hard to find a balance, and I love it. In those moments where you see kids grow and the light bulb goes on, and all the other moments you don't see, you hope students carry with them, though. Those carry me through, but I currently feel defeated and unsupported, and I'm actually not sure I want to continue on in this line of work. My own four kids are old enough to call me out and to ask me if I could do less or if I could give up my municipal work as a counselor. She says, I just don't understand why the government of Alberta doesn't want to invest in Alberta's future. She says, I've never looked for other jobs more than I have this year, and that was before the strike. She says, anyway, after a few tears with your education segment with the trustees and a bit of feeling sorry for myself, Thomas Lukaszuk was so inspiring with his Forever Canada campaign, and he actually helped lighten the mood in my car on our way to hockey. And I know that there's people out there who love and support workers and who love Canada and who love all the things that make this country great and the things that actually could allow Alberta to live up to its full potential. Erika says, who knows, maybe for the same reason that I entered municipal politics, maybe I'll need to explore things at the provincial political level. Maybe fighting for positive change and creating policy that allows and supports people in their business and steps out of the way and allows people to be successful on their own will keep me from wanting to run from this current state of affairs of micromanaging and controlling public sectors and secret agendas that only benefit that inner circle. Erika says, thank you so much for all that you and your team do. And she signs off, Johnny, with this quote from Dennis Waitley. Happiness cannot be traveled to, owned, earned, worn, or consumed. Happiness is the spiritual experience of living every minute with love, grace, and gratitude. Erika, you have authored our positive reflection for this week, proudly presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. Kudos on getting Kuby solar panels up on your roof, by the way. Keep the faith, Erika. We're lucky to have people like you raising kids, teaching kids, and of course, serving your community as a counselor. You can submit your positive reflection to Real Talk by sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And don't forget, you can get a solar quote anytime by visiting kuby.ca. We're back at it tomorrow. Keep us posted. We'll keep an eye on what happens with Alberta's teachers. The fall session sitting at the Alberta Legislature. There's lots of ground to cover. We'll go there again in 22 hours. We'll see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton.